7 p.m. And it's the date today is Monday, November 15th. So first things first, I'm going to call roll call. So if you're here, just say aye or here. And we do have one member missing, Alderman Corpus Dax, as Joe mentioned earlier. She will not be here. So the first person is Christina Ortiz.
Aye.
Second person is Isaac Kapuscinski. And please, I do apologize if I mispronounce your name. Please correct me if I do mispronounce it, but Isaac Kapuscinski. Oh, okay. Maybe we're missing Isaac here. Okay. Michael Vincent.
Present.
Marcus Grignan.
Present.
Elizabeth Kostica.
Kostica? Yeah, that's fine.
Kostica? Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I do apologize. Okay. John Shelton.
Here. Hi, everybody.
Hi. And then Saeed Hassan.
Here.
Great. And then usually we would have an approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, but we didn't send that out to everyone. So we're going to hold that for the next meeting in December, and we will approve it then. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct. We can approve the agenda for this evening too, though.
Okay. Okay, so then we're gonna go ahead and move on to the agenda. So if there's anyone who wants to modify or the agenda, please speak now. Otherwise, we're gonna move to approving the agenda for tonight. And there's 2 items on the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second. So that was by Commissioner Vincent. And then can I get a second for that?
I second.
Okay. And that was by Commissioner Ortiz. All in favor of approving the agenda for tonight, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, so the approval of the agenda, the motion to approve the agenda is approved for tonight. And then we will, so there's 2 agenda items. The first of the agenda items is to review the draft strategic DE&I plan for the city of Green Bay. And the second agenda item is to discuss and address the needs of different groups in the community. And so we will start with agenda item number 1. And Joe, I wanted to also get clarification on this with you. Discussing and giving you and Raya input on the strategic plan today, it doesn't call for any motions to be taken because it's not going to be permanent changes, it's just input. Is that correct? So we don't need to take any motions while we discuss?
Yeah, I think the plan for tonight, I think the plan for tonight would be to have Raya give the presentation on the strategic plan that's been put together. Any input is definitely welcomed. I think just receiving and placing on file, because it's going to be a fluid document that we're going to continue to update the commission about. We can just receive and place on file and bring it back throughout the years.
Okay. Okay, so then we can get right into it. So Raya, if you if you have something prepared, feel free to start, or if anyone else has any discussions before we begin, please speak up now. And also, does everyone have a copy of the draft strategic DEI plan that Joe sent out earlier? If not, we can share that again.
Okay, if there are no, excuse me, further questions, I will go ahead and share my screen with you all. So, okay. Is everybody able to see this okay? Yes, okay, great. So this is the strategic DE&I plan I've mapped out for the city of Green Bay. And as Joe mentioned, this is a very fluid document. We are looking to be very agile with this and move and adjust as needed, editing or adding things in and out as necessary over time. And so this is the, as I said, strategic DE&I plan for the city of Green Bay, which I've called Plan IACT, Intentional Awareness and City Transformations. So the purpose of this plan is to grow employee intentional awareness and to provide educational programming and curriculum design on diversity, equity, inclusion, and emotional intelligence. Via implementation of key project components, the following concepts will be fostered: diversity, allyship, equity, belonging, inclusivity, and self-development within the city of Green Bay. So some of the key project components are as follows. So this has 5 crucial components, which include employee resource groups, educational programming, programming support and discussion series, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DE&I marketing, hiring, and retention plan, and community partnerships. And so as I'm going through this, I'm not going to go through every single step, but I will highlight pieces of it. And then I'll stop at each component so we can have discussion. If there are questions or if there's discussion surrounding pieces of this, please feel free to jump in when I pause. So component 1, focus, is employee resource groups. So the goal here is to develop employee resource groups, or ERGs, to foster diversity, inclusion, community belonging, allyship, and support within the organization and city of Green Bay. This will help to reduce turnover, support retention, and belonging. And so just as some touch points here for the ERG startup guide, we're looking for employees to submit paperwork to HR regarding the desired ERG startup group. Once approved by HR, set up the first meeting with ERG leadership, meet with the ERG leadership to establish who will have what role within the ERG, establish the core mission of the ERG and goals, discuss budget for the ERG if there is to be one, discuss when leadership will meet, develop the ERG yearly plan, including objectives, goals, and activities, decide who will set up the meeting occurrences and who will be responsible for notifying members or potential attendees of future events and info. And then the rest is kind of next steps on how to hold those meetings, what that looks like, the structure of that, and how to ensure efficiency from those meetings, including a survey that goes out to individuals who have attended. And then there's also next steps, which help to determine how to hold the second meeting and what to do as a group moving forward to ensure that this ERG group or the multiple ERG groups that we hope to have are as successful as possible and don't lose their traction over time. Any questions on this component regarding ERGs?
Does the HR paperwork that's referenced at the beginning of the guide, does that exist already, or is that something yet to be developed?
I believe that currently exists.
Okay. And then what is the decision process used for approving an ERG once that paperwork has been submitted?
Joe, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, so the paperwork put in place is based upon our personnel policy that oversees ERGs. So the personnel policy, which you can find on our website, and wish I probably would have reviewed that so I can give you a better answer, but it's based upon, does it further the goals that are outlined in this strategic plan, and is it based upon the, I guess, the guidelines that are put in place. So it has to be a certain amount of employees. It has to be kind of a description of when they're going to meet, how they're going to meet, what their budget would be. But the Human Resources Department will review it and will work with the ERG to make sure it complies with our policy. And that's kind of the procedure to approve it.
Are there ERGs today?
There is not. We've had some interest over the year, and now we're just kind of working on individuals filling out the paperwork and making sure that the ducks are in a row. But yeah, there is not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on component 1? Okay, then I will move on to component 2. So the focus here is educational programming. So the goal here for educational programming is to introduce awareness surrounding diversity, inclusion, belonging, and emotional intelligence concepts to the city of Green Bay, and to foster discussion to further the education on key concepts and initiatives. And so the way that this is laid out and some of the items that have been created, or the curriculum that has been created to do so, includes inclusive insights, cards, and discussions, which are virtual at this moment. The Mayor's Dialogue series also supports this, newsletter content surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion topics, and then a book club series that we are looking to offer quarterly. And so a few of these concepts, as you can see for 2021, have included ERGs, allyship, change, compassion, empathy, intention, appreciation, recognition, reflection, November's topic, which was trust, and December's, which will be listening. And then I also have some 2022 concepts listed out here, which will be further developed out for 2022. So that includes inclusivity, interaction, understanding, growing, and communication, which have been outlined already. And then to support this, a training video, excuse me, was made by myself. And so this is accessible to all employees and supervisors and leadership to understand further how to use these cards in a team setting and how to further discussion surrounding these topics. And then this is an example of an inclusive insights card that went out. This one was on intention. And so the way these cards are structured out is there is a concept, a definition, a quote to support, and then generally 2 questions to allow employees to begin discussion surrounding the concepts and how that ties into our goals, such as belonging, allyship, and inclusivity within the city of Green Bay. And then the next component here of the educational part of things is the Mayor's Dialogue series. So this year, we've been fortunate enough to have 3 of those, which the first one was held in May, and this is in partnership with UW Green Bay. And so we are super excited about that partnership, and we look forward to continuing that. So May's concept was Latinos are not a monolith. June's concept was the history of policing in Wisconsin, and October's was on the history of Native people in Northeast Wisconsin. And so we will be adding to that list for 2022 and developing out some of the further concepts that we hope to bring more people forth from UW Green Bay to speak on that for the city. And then this is just an example of some of our newsletter content that goes out. This goes out monthly, and that's cascaded out with different statistics or information. This month's was on neurodiversity, so helping employees to understand more about neurodiversity. And then this card here, or this section here, highlights some of the statistics from 2021 surrounding diversity and inclusion. And then next, we have potential book clubs, and this spans 2021 through 2023. And so we just completed this first one on the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace by Gary Chapman and Paul White. And the concepts supported here were recognition, inclusion, belonging, and appreciation. And so this was extremely important and a great way to kick us off, because it ties into another point that we have that we'll see down below, having to do with intention when we, or I'm sorry, retention as it is in relationship to DE&I with hiring and recruiting. And so that was a very interesting book club that we just concluded. So the next book that we're looking to feature is How to Be an Inclusive Leader. So the concept there is inclusivity. We're also looking at The Advantage for May of 2022, which discusses communication and belonging. We're also looking at emotional agility, which highlights emotional intelligence and emotional agility, hence the title. And then The Blind Spot, which discusses hidden bias. Any questions on component 2?
Yeah, right. I was wondering if you guys tracked like the metrics of like participants you guys had, or the effectiveness of these trainings. And then also my second question would be like, are these trainings required, or are they an optional part of benefits for the city employees?
Absolutely. So at this time, These are optional, so people can elect in to take anything that's being offered at this point. It's very encouraged, and we do have communications that are sent out by both myself and Joe supporting all of this. And then Ahmad also ties into this, especially with the Mayor's Dialogue series, and puts a ton of effort forward. And I collaborate with him quite often to ensure that we are communicating out just kind of on a super often basis to make sure that people know what's going on, what's available. And all of these different opportunities are highlighted at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And then reminders are cascaded out along the way just to kind of hit on, you know, maybe employees who didn't see a previous email. We also use the kind of importance button, right? The red exclamation point, which helps to call attention to it, to put more eyes on it. And so that's one way that we kind of conjure support surrounding this. And then to answer your question regarding metrics, yes, we track. We do track to see who has attended. And then a survey is also sent out post an event. So for example, for the Mayor's Dialogue series, we generally send a survey out to find out, did people feel like this was informative? Did they learn from this? Is there another area that they're seeking to gain knowledge in? And if so, what would that be? So there are spaces for employees to provide their feedback to us. And we can also see from an attendance perspective where kind of the direction we're going in, and then we collaborate on how to amp that up.
Thank you.
And
Absolutely.
and Chair Yang, I just have a question maybe for you or the group too. When you talked about metrics for effectiveness, you know, I think that's something that maybe we'd be open if there's any suggestions or input on what those could look like. You know, I think sometimes these initiatives take time, so maybe it's the metrics of turnover rate going down or something like that. But if there's any suggestions on how we can measure effectiveness, we'd be open to listening and hearing that.
Absolutely. Other thoughts or questions on this section? Okay, I will continue on to component 3, programming support. So again, this spans 2022 to 2023. And the goal here is to support DE&I educational growth and programming by identifying and showcasing potential speakers, media clips, and resources to further employee discussion and strengthen understanding within the city of Green Bay. And so here are some of the resources, media resources rather, that have been identified and some additional resources surrounding program support. So for example, there is a media resource entitled The Look, which could serve as a discussion point following the video. We could invite people in a virtual setting to discuss this. There's the Harvard Implicit Bias Quiz, 16 Personalities Quiz, a video on blind spots and bias, a video on prototype bias, and then some other clips here which reference diversity, inclusion, and equity best practices for hiring. And then this is the Know to Grow series. And so looking forward towards September of 2022, a series on self-understanding and awareness, and then looking at Know to Grow, focusing in on emotion and how we respond to things, and in November, and then looking forward to 2023, January of that year, Know to Grow bias. So having more discussion kind of surrounding some of the key concepts that we've had an opportunity to begin to know better, and putting a focus towards employee discussion and understanding how people are processing this, what it means to them, and understanding the differences and similarities that we have when we look through our different lenses. Questions on this component? Okay, and then component 4. So DE&I recruiting, hiring initiatives, and the goal here is to recruit, engage, and retain a wide range of diverse talent and to capture the attention as to why the city of Green Bay is the place to be and work. This methodology aims to employ a larger, more diverse pool of candidates, engage and retain those on staff, and promote the city of Green Bay via online platforms. This seeks to engage new populations and educate others on the city of Green Bay. So following this, we just have some of our current data. And the goal here for clarity is for the city of Green Bay to reflect, so internally speaking, the city of Green Bay employees to reflect the populations that we're serving externally. And so when we look at the city as a whole, internally, are we reflecting the diversity that we have? And so that's one way that I measure and assess for this and create goals. And so we have some of the city's population from the census report data on that here. And then we compare that to our data that we have internally on who we have representing different populations. So the plan here is to assess and analyze the hiring data, to report on findings, to create hiring goals, to assess policy and hiring strategy. We're looking to tap into mining resources, promote and communicate the positive environment, organizational culture, diverse happenings in Green Bay, and to communicate employment opportunities within the city of Green Bay using LinkedIn, Facebook, which is now known as Meta, and other methodologies identified by human resources. So just a few of these steps, again, I won't kind of go through every single one, but some of this might look like creating and maintaining a strong online presence to promote the city of Green Bay, formulating the ability to copy and paste live announcements, which we've been able to do. As you can see, I've put implemented next to the initiatives that we've been able to complete here. Maintain strong partnerships locally and explore and define alliances with key stakeholders, so universities, tech schools, and different online avenues that we can use for that, promoting ERGs when that will be established, and looking to use inclusive insights cards on LinkedIn and Facebook to help the community have an understanding of where we're focusing in and what we're moving towards. So there are some action steps defined here for recruitment, and then some action steps defined for retention. Any questions on this component of things?
I do have a quick question. Well, this might be a lengthy question actually. When you guys are discussing the hiring process and looking at different diverse candidates, have you guys brought up to the table the discussion about like fair chance hiring? So,
Yes.
Oh, okay. And then what was the, if you can share a little bit more about what you
Sure.
guys discussed and what the outcome was of that?
So this is something that we have begun talking about recently. We're still going to continue the discussion, and we're looking at different methodologies we can use. We also lean into some data and different information we have, and we understand that that's something to examine further. And so we're definitely having more discussion about that. At this time, to my knowledge, we haven't implemented anything yet. This is strictly discussions based at this time.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Does the city offer any kind of employee engagement or sentiment survey, either annually or on any other kind of cadence?
We do, yes. In fact, that's something I'm working on right now, and that will be being sent out in early 2022.
And with those results, would you be able to stratify by different identities so that you could track how employees of different backgrounds, using the metrics that are important to you, are responding in that survey?
That's a great question. Joe, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We had a survey in 2019 that went out, and we did have demographics as part of the responses for employees. We really focused on location and department of employees to try and break down the data that way. But I guess we didn't really think of to look at other ways to break it down. So that's something we can look into. We also, respect people's privacies if they don't want to fill in those answers as well. So sometimes it might not be easy to break it down that way. But yeah, definitely breaking it down. I think last time we did by age group as well to try and get like a generational difference, but I don't think we did race or ethnicity. So that's something maybe we can look into doing next go around.
And that might, lead you to some KPIs for the future to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. And on this survey, we will have that component. And Joe, in reviewing that, I do believe we did have a section on that. This time around, it will be a bit more comprehensive. And so there will be more groups represented on that list. Any other thoughts or questions on this component?
I don't necessarily have another question, but I just wanted to bring up the statistics that you brought up with the amount of diversity that we have at the city level. Well, I guess there is a question. I mean, either Raya or Joe, do you guys have goals or plans of how much or what percentage you want to increase and making sure that there's more diversity on the team or for city employees? And also, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, is there a goal that is set, or have you guys discussed about where you guys want to see those numbers at in the next year or two?
Ryan, do you remember the number we used? I'm trying to pull up the HR goals that we have.
We originally were looking at a certain percentage of increase, and I think we landed at a 5% increase structured out over 5 years. I think that's what we were looking at.
I believe that's what it is. It's a 5% increase. Hopefully by department, I think is what we were hoping for. But as you can see, I'm trying to pull this up here. You know, if you do 10% and your department has, 12 people or something like that, it's not easy to do as compared to maybe like a different department that has like 200 or something like that. So that's where we thought it was a realistic goal based upon where we're at right now, because as you can see, it's not a very diverse population. So we wanted to have something that we felt like we could hit over the next few years.
And I want to create space for anyone else who has questions. So if anyone else has questions, go ahead. But I do have one last question here as well.
Well, I was just, I know that you said that you will put it, in different media outlets, about hiring or bringing people to Green Bay. Let's say if you do not meet that goal, are you gonna try harder to go to different states or something like that, cities, bigger cities, to try to attract people to come to Little Green Bay?
That's a fantastic question. So the short answer is yes. And we have also been working really diligently to connect with surrounding states. So looking at Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota. A few of our postings are also national. And so we promote out on LinkedIn from a city standpoint, but then and also from a personal account standpoint. Our generalists promote out on LinkedIn. So we have access to that. And that's something new that we have implemented since I've been in my role. And so we're very excited to have access to this. And so we've been really amping up on what we're able to cascade out and promote and showcase. And so that has been fantastic. And we are able to track to see by diversity to see who has applied to different roles. And so we do have software where we can do that. So we can have a further understanding just from an applicant basis. Are we reaching populations that we're looking to reach? Do we need to change some of our strategy up a little bit to see how we can reach people in a stronger capacity? And so we are definitely having ongoing discussions surrounding that. And we look forward to creating these partnerships with different states and different universities and connecting as strongly as possible with surrounding areas as well.
Great. That's awesome.
Other thoughts or questions on this?
Raya, have you guys tracked why people aren't applying who have a diverse background, or why people are being turned away if they do apply?
So to my knowledge, our generalists do ask if something is offered, and if an applicant decides not to take or accept a role, our generalists who have contact with that individual do inquire as to the why behind it. And so that's something that we're on top of, and we continue to have discussion about ensuring that we're gathering that information and that data to figure out the why. The goal here is to definitely, in any case, get as much information as possible. So in my last meeting surrounding recruiting and hiring for DE&I, that was something that we touched on, is really digging deep into when candidates, if they're turning a role down, what's the reasoning behind it, and how can we kind of create a system to understand that further as part of our protocol.
And I'm so sorry I keep bothering you guys. One last question
No,
that I have.
please, that's what this time is for. Have at it.
Have you guys discussed about salary rates and if it has been fair, you know, through the years, and how you guys are going to move forward, making that more equitable?
So this is something I've touched on in our meetings, and I've raised to try to find out, you know, from a national perspective, this is a big discussion right now, right? And so internally, of course, we want to echo those discussions and figure out what more we can do as a whole to try to ensure that we are being as fair and equitable as possible. And so we'll continue to have those discussions to examine where we're at and what needs to be done. And Joe, you may have more information on that than I do at this time.
Yeah, I can talk about the city maybe as a whole with the compensation study. There was one that was conducted in 2016, 2017, and 2017 is when it was finalized to look at all of our positions. So I'm not sure if that's what you were asking about, but that was the first study that I think they did since the 80s. That's a long time, as you can imagine. So I hope to have a salary study done in the next couple of years to do maybe around every 5 to 7 years, or at least have some targeted positions on that, because as you all are well aware, there's a huge gap between the private sector and public sector right now, one of the biggest gaps we've had in some time. So yeah, we definitely have to make sure that we're competitive. And sometimes it's difficult to be competitive with the private sector, but we definitely want to make sure we're competitive with other municipalities and what they're paying too, especially for our area. So I would anticipate the next couple of years, we'll look again at all of our positions and see where we're at in comparison to internally and external companies.
Me again. So just wondering again, this is focusing a lot on, well, basically on race. Have you thought about people with disabilities to include in your staff
Yes.
Yeah, there's one program called Project Search that we're hoping to learn more about and work with to have some opportunities through there. I believe Project Search works through the Department of Workforce Development. So that's one project we've been looking into to try and hire more people with disabilities and incorporate them into the workplace.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions on this section? These are fantastic questions.
So this might be a little outside of the scope of things, but because I know this is talking about internal hiring and things that deal with the city, but have you guys discussed with people who have the power to hire contractors, outside contractors? Have you talked to them about hiring a more diverse group of people and I guess just making sure that there's an even spread of different groups, I guess.
Are you speaking about in the community, Tara?
Yeah. So so this kind of goes back to the training. So have you guys touched up on the I guess the idea of when you're reaching out and working with outside municipalities or outside private businesses or whoever you guys contract work with, do you guys do training on that, making sure that they reach out and they really dig deep and try to work with minority-owned businesses as well?
So I do not know if we've taken that step yet. And maybe, and I don't want to call it a mod here, but I'm not sure if the mayor's office has looked into that or if other departments have. But I do think if that was something to be done, I think it would have to be included in kind of like our RFP process, and that it's part of the scores when we decide who to go with. So I do think there has been an effort to try and contract with more minority-owned businesses and things like that, but I don't know anything officially has been done. But I think that'd be something for us to explore with our RFP process, that it's part of the scoring that we use before we pick a vendor to work with. I do believe we have incorporated into all of our contracts anti-discrimination clause into all of them that they have to agree to. That's a pretty common clause that we have, but that was implemented a couple years ago.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, this is to talk about serendipity. This is a conversation the mayor and I were having specifically today to talk more about how to recreate a process that looks at procurement, contracting, and other elements moving forward, looking through a lens of equity and inclusion. Other communities we've seen both across the state and across the country have implemented these types of measurements, including a heavy emphasis on locally procured elements that often reflect the diversity of the community. So we are actively exploring that conversation. This could be something that the commission could take up and support as a recommendation. So if that's something that you all are interested in pushing for and thinking more deeply about, I can imagine that there would be a lot of open minds to hearing what this commission thinks about creating that kind of dynamic where both procurement and contracting had a deeper equity lens, as well as an orientation towards local, as well as around ability and access. So not to give you more work, but if the commission was interested in having that conversation, I imagine a lot of us would like to participate in that conversation and would support those kind of recommendations.
Just to make sure that I'm tracking, so in order to move forward with any kind of vendor or supplier diversity program, that would live outside the confines of HR, so then we'd have to create a new structure to support that. And so having that recommendation come from the commission would give that some teeth. Is that what you're saying?
That's yes, meaning that any kinds of shifts or changes into our procurement or consultancy contract may require actual ordinance change or shift
Okay.
versus just a practical shift. So
Okay.
if the recommendation was to work towards increasing supplier diversity, contractor diversity, and a variety of mechanisms, including hiring locally, that would if it passed the muster and had the ability to do that, there may be a portion of that that could be just implemented. But we were talking, the mayor and I talking today, that there might actually need potential council approval for a shift or change in policy or procedure. Again, because we're still exploring that, we don't know where one ends and one begins, or where that becomes. We can obviously invite our legal team to the next meeting, but that would have to be something if the commission was interested in exploring, to set up some time and put that on an agenda and create the room to have that discussion. So I can't concretely answer it because we may not exactly have it right now.
Sure.
But we don't know where administration begins and ends, and where approval by the council begins and ends. But maybe Director Joe Faulds could tell us more about that line, but I believe it may need or require council approval, but I am unsure.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, just quickly, I think what we would have to do is, and I'm not well versed in our procurement manual that we have, but I think we have to review that and then maybe just kind of look at what some other municipalities are doing or other organizations, and see what maybe common general concepts we can include into our procurement process and go from there. That's what I think would be probably the next steps. And I do think the Common Council does approve the procurement process. So it'd just be, I think, incorporating some of those DE&I initiatives into that process.
Okay. Before we move on, one last call. Any other comments or questions surrounding this section? Okay, I'll move on to component 5, which is community partnerships. So the goal here is to form long-lasting and intentional partnerships with the Green Bay community to impact diversity and well-being for all community members for the purpose of growing diversity, equity, and inclusion within the city of Green Bay and the outer lying community. Furthermore, this is to raise awareness surrounding DE&I statistics and progress internally and externally. Also to create space for diversity of thought, awareness, and continual project collaboration and outreach with area organizations. And so just to go over a few of the action items here, the diversity and inclusion coordinator is to sit on and contribute to area DE&I task forces. So I sit on 3 of those, one for the New North, one for the Fox Valley, and one for the Chamber. I also am a member of a subcommittee on diversifying area boards for local organizations. I help oversee the human rights campaign documentation and scorecard. I also participate in hidden bias and cultural awareness cohorts. And as you can see, the list goes on. And so I am really looking to serve externally, create those partnerships, maintain those partnerships, and grow those partnerships, and help to consult and influence within the community to really help create a space of belonging and inclusion for the city of Green Bay. And then under this, we have a component as well with the Equal Rights Commission. So that's the startup of the Equal Rights Commission, and then looking to assess the needs and concerns of the community, and then developing projects and policies based on community DE&I needs, which will be ongoing. So that is the strategic plan as it is today. Any questions on this component or comments on this component? Okay, I will stop sharing my screen at this point.
Raya, sorry, I do have something real quick. So that's a lot of work for one person. Have you discussed with Joe or that, with the city about possibly getting some help with that? I know you have us as commissioners, but you're doing that, those tasks daily during your work hours and behind the scenes. So is there possibility for you to get help?
Joe, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, I'll go ahead. I think at this point, we're not looking to add any positions to the HR budget, that's just kind of how we are across board based upon our resources. But I do think, I'm glad you pointed this out. Raya's put in a lot of time and effort into this. This was not an easy project. Look at all the resources she researched and brought into this. Also meeting with HR staff and other departments and just getting information from outside partners too. So she's done an outstanding job putting this together. And I think it's also to keep in mind, it is a lot of work and there's a lot of things for Raya to do. We also, though, with like the recruitment, we have about 2 to 3 people in the HR staff that are dedicated to recruitment. And then we also have other departments and supervisors that are dedicated to creating this atmosphere. So it's really a lot of Raya bringing the resources to the organization. And then also we have a training component as well that we're going to start with Raya helping train some of our employees. So it is a lot of work and we'll continue to evaluate it because we don't want to have too much on one person, but there are also other staff that are able to assist Raya in some of these areas.
Great, wonderful.
Any other thoughts or comments on this? Yes.
Yes. John, do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead, Christina.
No, I just had a question, and maybe you have already said it. What's the timeline for this?
So right now, this was created at the beginning of 2021, and I began implementing it within a month of creating it. And so the timeline right now goes through the end of or Q4 of 2023.
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly, sort of building on what Tara, kind of alluded to a couple minutes ago, that, this is an impressive vision and an impressive document, and just want to thank you for your work putting this together. I'm glad our city is, following this path. So thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I'm so honored to have the privilege of being able to just have the opportunity to observe and assess and look at what more we can do from a holistic standpoint to enrich the community. So as you saw, these are 5 areas that I've come up with, but as I mentioned before, this is a very agile document. And so any input is welcome, and we will continue to assess. And from where I sit, I am always assessing to see what more can be done in this space for DE&I, not only internally, but externally as well. And when we look at even current trends going on where we see many companies are moving to more remote status for employees. And so that's an opportunity. And I know the chamber is working on this as well. And Ahmad could probably speak to that. You know, we're really looking at what we can offer here. And as those populations look to perhaps come this way, a lot of what I do is looking to see, you know, serving the community that we have at hand right now, and also looking to see as we grow and diversify, because we know in time, these populations are going to continue to grow and grow, right? And so part of that is equipping the city for what the knowledge it needs to have and the sense of belonging it needs to have to continue to welcome populations as they arrive here.
Yeah, again, I also want to echo what John and Tara said. That's a very comprehensive document, a document that, you know, loaded in a sense that is you know, requires actually not only one person, but a community to work together to make it happen. And with DEI, you know, the community partnership part, not only that do we look from the equity aspect of it, but also accessibility of services to the community. I was just thinking, you know, as I sit in my office, people come with things like, how can I pay, you know, a parking ticket in the city? Where can I go? We're thinking about equity, but also accessibility of services that within the city is paramount. So going forward, Raya, you have our back, and expanding the community, you know, making sure that we rally around you. Green Bay is becoming more diverse with a lot of individuals like me with this accent coming a lot nowadays. So you will be, we will be behind your back to help you to make sure that this is not one person journey, but a collective journey.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your words immensely. And as you said, this is a community effort. This is a collaboration, and partnerships are born out of these efforts. And so I appreciate that. And I look forward to working with everybody to enrich the community around us.
Thank you, Raya, so much for sharing the document today and for going through it with us. The time is now 5:55 p.m. So I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. I want to see if anyone wants to make a motion to have this document receive a place on file so that we can discuss it in the next few meetings if there's anything or any other ideas that come up.
You want a motion, Tara?
Yes, if you guys think necessary, if you guys think that this is something that you guys would like to continue to review, and if there's nothing at the meetings, we don't have to discuss about it, but just to have it on file, I think would be good. If there's consensus on it, but if not, then we don't need to.
I mean, if you need a motion, you know, so move.
I'll second.
What would the motion be? To continue discussing the document as it evolves, to...
Yep, so the motion would be to have this document receive a place on file, so it'll stay on our agenda in case anyone has any more input in the next couple of meetings. But like I said, if it comes up on the agenda and no one has anything to say, we could just move on to the next agenda item. So then was that a first from?
For me.
Okay, okay. So we have a first from
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth, and then a second from Commissioner Shelton. Okay, so then the motion to receive, for this document to receive, place and file is approved. And then it is 5:57 now, so I
Oh, excuse me, Chair Yang.
Yep.
I think you have to have everyone vote on it as well.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
All in favor, sorry. I always miss that part. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And if there are any opposed, please say nay. Okay, so that motion is approved. Okay, and then can we get a motion to hold the second agenda item for the next meeting? The second agenda item is us to address the needs of different groups in the community.
Can I have a point of order here, actually?
Yes.
How long is our meeting scheduled to go?
It can go as
Oh,
long as you guys want it to.
I'm sorry, I always just mistook it as 1 hour because that's what EDA does, but okay. Yeah, no, John, you're right. Good question. I mean, if everyone is still able to meet, then we can definitely discuss agenda item 2 tonight.
I don't know if this is out of order, but if folks are okay with this, I would be okay staying for like half an hour to just kind of talk about, given that we've been a commission for a couple of months now and haven't had a chance to talk about much of a kind of very specific direction. I think it might be good for us to talk about that if people have time.
I have time.
Commissioner Yang, you are on mute.
I'm so sorry. I was just echoing what John was saying, but it seems like I haven't seen or heard anyone say no. So we can continue to agenda item number 2 then, which is to address the needs of the different groups of the community. So John, Commissioner Shelton, I'm going to let you lead this for right now, and then I will chime in.
Sure. I mean, I think I appreciate that. I think it's very exciting to have this group of people here, and I think if we think back to the mayor's charge on this, he was really pushing us to think about things that could be potentially transformative. And I guess, as I've thought a little bit about this and, just followed city politics, it seems like we have an opportunity here because there is funds from the ARPA dollars, right? And there's this conversation about, I think it's like 25 million or something like that. And Joe or Ahmad Rivera might be able to give us some details on that if I've got the numbers wrong. But I think thinking about those funds being allocated at or at least kind of put in the pipeline, I guess, at some point soon, we might want to think about how we might make some recommendations about those funds moving forward. So I don't know what other people have been thinking about this kind of stuff, but one of the things that I've kind of had some conversations with people and thought a little bit about this and actually kind of took seriously the mayor's charge to think about this in the context of the Kerner Commission. And one of the things that occurs to me that we might want to think about taking some action on somehow as this commission is the issue of housing. So we have a pretty significant challenge to this community is affordable housing. We know that that's connected to issues of race and I don't study this, so I don't know, but I would assume probably disability status and many other categories. And so I know that there's a particular amount of the ARPA funds that are either earmarked by the federal government for housing, or I think the mayor has a framework in which a certain portion of it, if it's adopted by the city council, would be essentially allocated for housing and economic development. And so, I just wonder if there's anything we can do as a commission to maybe make some recommendations around that might help to structure how that money is allocated. So one idea I had is, I don't have any ideas about how to allocate it, but one idea I had, if this is something that folks wanted to do, was maybe try to organize some public hearings, where we hear from different constituents in the community about the challenges, of housing, and then that might down the road structure, some recommendations, in terms of how maybe some of the ARPA money is used. So those are just some thoughts. I mean, if people have other ideas that they want us to consider, I mean, I think that would be great too. I just, that's something that I've kind of thought about as in the past couple of months. But curious to hear any feedback folks have there or on anything else.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Sheldon. I agree. We do have, right now, everything is aligned. We have the right stakeholders at the table. We have funding available. So right now would be the best time to make recommendations if we wanted to see any positive changes. And I know, Ahmad, housing is your baby, Ahmad. So I know you do have a lot of information on that. But real quick before Ahmad gives us a little bit more information, I just wanted to make sure that moving forward, talking and addressing the needs of the community, we look at it strategically, and we strategically incorporate the public and their input in this, so that we understand how to organize and prioritize their needs. But Ahmad, did you have any comments on that? And can you share a little bit more, Ahmad, if you know about what the housing committee is up to, or what their plans are?
Well, one, I'm just really excited that you all are interested in, and I think to both President Commissioner Tara and Commissioner Shelton's feedback. I think, the hope is that you all take on issues that you think are really important, and you work to figure out what that looks like and build on recommendations that can help shape the future of the city based on a diversity and equity lens. So if housing is that place, if procurement and supplier diversity are things that you all take on, diversifying the workforce of the city of Green Bay, those are all up to you all. And so we're looking both through your guidance and thoughtfulness on who to bring forward, how to get more information about those things, and build up recommendations coming forward. So I just want to reiterate what I heard in your meeting. And then secondly, a quick update is that there is a housing working group that currently partners with the chamber, local educational institutions, local community organizations, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. There's also an initiative that the mayor is on directly dealing with folks who are experiencing houselessness or homelessness, who are currently unhoused. And so those are two pathways that we're currently working on. There has been a report that's been released on those who are currently unhoused in the city of Green Bay, and a series of recommendations that the city could tackle. That was in partnership with local community foundation, people who provide services, those that are currently unhoused, as well as the city, and the mayor himself was on that committee and shaped that. We're currently working on the chamber stakeholders and city housing working group, which is part of the DE&I task force of the chamber, Greater Green Bay Chamber of Commerce. We're currently honing in on a Live It Up Green Bay style fund, where there will be monies put into hopefully either a revolving or replenishing fund that would allow any participating agency, whether the city agency, a nonprofit, educational institution, or for-profit counterpart, to be able to pool money together, and that would serve as down payment assistance, either potentially as a grant and or as a zero interest loan, so that anyone in those participating agencies should be able to experience, if they choose to do so, homeownership. And so we'll be working through and fleshing that out and presenting that to the public in the next 3 to 6 months on what that will look like. And then there's obviously the ARPA dollars, which are coming forward. And there's about the mayor's framework of around $6 million associated with housing and economic development initiatives around where you live, work, play, and build, your family, your legacies, your careers. And so, we're looking for thoughtful approaches to how do we use that kind of money. Housing is obviously an incredibly complex and dynamic system that takes often a lot of mechanisms in place to kind of engage. And so these are the current things that we're working on, but you can also host a meeting where we only talk about housing. You could talk about specific initiatives. You could talk about the shortages or what you all think is best to best inform this commission to either come up with recommendations or talk about thoughtful approaches. So, I leave that in your hands, but those are the kind of things that we're currently working on that are across sector with the city, but there's always room for thoughtfulness, particularly around the ARPA dollar usage, which needs to be allocated by 2024 and then used by 2026. This is one-time money, and I think we're looking for catalytic investments that could really make a difference over time, not just in the moment, but really either serve as a model for what we can do, or can serve as an option to really have some physical changes to the city of Green Bay to increase housing and access. So again, these are all up to you. So I'm just rattling off a bunch of things, what you all think is best. We will keep coming back to you and asking for you. So I would say the best suggestion I have is that if you think house one tackle, then that should be an agenda item where you invite both folks from the city and other folks that you think to give you good advice and or the status of things and figure out how to best inform potential recommendations coming from this body.
Commissioner Sheldon, you had mentioned the potential of a set of hearings. I'm curious for what's in your vision with that. Is there a model that you have in mind that to kind of play that out?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Vinson. That's a great question. I hadn't really got too far in thinking about exactly what that would look like, but I think one of the things that might be valuable, right? If you think back to the Kerner Commission, right? They held public hearings with public testimony. And one of the things that we could do is, hold these meetings in public so that, we could, I know there's been some ink spilled in the newspapers about housing, and certainly as Ahmad just described, there's a lot of discussion going on about this, but to really kind of elevate this as a public conversation so that the recommendations we have, again, I keep going back to the mayor's kind of charge for us to think about the Kerner Commission as an example, a set of recommendations that, obviously we wouldn't be able to do this, super soon, but built, I'm picturing a series of, hearings where we could build to some bigger kind of recommendations that could structure not just the ARPA dollars, but future decisions made by the city about how to ensure that everybody has access, to good housing, right? And that's kind of what the Kerner Commission did, right? It made these very far-reaching, set of recommendations. They weren't all listened to, right? But they did elevate a lot of issues around poverty and economic insecurity and how they connected, to a lot of the urban insurrections in the 1960s. And so, obviously we don't have the kind of resources that the Kerner Commission has, but I think there are ways, if we were to have some public conversations, that we could also kind of elevate this onto, I know other people are doing this too, but play a role in elevating this on sort of the political radar as well. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? So in terms of nuts and bolts, right, I could imagine many of those groups that Ahmad mentioned, having them come and testify, but also, all of us here have connections to different constituencies in this community, getting people that might not show up at a Chamber of Commerce committee, Chamber of Commerce hearing to come in and testify about their experiences trying to secure housing here, right? So that it's not just kind of like, because you read these newspaper stories where you have these like anecdotal quotes from people, but maybe pulling in some more folks from lots of different constituencies to have a kind of structured conversation about what people are actually experiencing, in addition to some where the aggregate numbers are, right, that I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce are working with. So those are just a few things that I was kind of thinking, but obviously I haven't gotten too far in this, so whatever recommendations other folks have here would be I think like really welcome and a good part of the conversation.
Is anybody, this is Mark, is anybody aware of how much ARPA funding is still available to the city, or have we basically allocated it all to certain projects?
This is Ahmad speaking. There's approximately 11 million. We are obviously finishing up the budget process that should be moving forward. So there's a portion that's covered, obviously the cost of related to COVID impacting the city itself, but there's approximately $11 million available for the various categories I mentioned earlier. And so it hasn't been allocated as of yet. We are, like I said, we do have a framework that we're operating from, and housing, affordable housing and housing access has about $6 million attributed to that, 6 to 10 million attributed to that. So obviously we're looking for, again, this is one-time money, innovative catalytic projects that can help make a major difference in people's lives, or an idea that hasn't been done yet that we could support. So, we're obviously open. We've done a survey. We've had 2 town halls and 2 city council meetings on this, but we're always open until we can't be, which is up until 2024, where it has to be allocated, and 2026, where it has to be spent. Those are the 2 things that we don't have much control over.
And how much of that 6 to 10 million has been discussed or possibly planned for tiny house development? Any discussions on tiny houses?
There have been discussions. We have not gotten a recommendation, or there was not that much feedback. I believe some people commented that on the survey. If that's something you all think we should be looking at and exploring, I think you should get together and think about that and put together a proposal, or suggest that we explore that proposal. So I think, so yes, it's been, an idea has been generated, but there hasn't been either advocacy or support broad-based yet on that particular idea. But I think obviously the mayor's administration is open to that.
The money that is going to be coming from the Oneida Nation to do different work around, like plowing their roads and things like that, is that money going to be allocated for certain things, or is that strictly like to sustain the city? All I know is I know that the agreement that Mayor Gingrich and the Oneida Nation have basically reenacted after a number of years of not having be in place, that money that's coming in for the city, is that any of that money, is that already strictly allocated for certain things, certain departments, or anything like that? Are you aware?
So what you're describing, just for everyone else in the room, is or in the Zoom chat, is the new agreement that we had with the United Nation. There is like a one-time amount up to $500,000 and other goods and services that can be negotiated on that. And then there's a shared governance structure around various types of things. I do think that is different than a variety of infrastructure projects or housing projects. The Oneida Nation did get an allocation of ARPA dollars that they ultimately can decide on their own how to navigate and decide how they're going to spend with those same similar time restrictions. But currently right now, there is nothing in the shared governance agreement about necessarily building housing. I would say that that's relatively a smaller amount of money, like actual fiscal dollars, than other types of things that we currently have before us. But as I said, there's always something to be said about thoughtful partnerships across both sectors and boundaries of municipalities and nations to figure out housing solutions, if that's something that the commission is interested in doing.
Okay. Yeah, just curious, just to piggyback on what you're saying too, of like thoughtful partnerships. I think there might be an opportunity there with Oneida, Green Bay, and possibly Menominee, where we could possibly utilize some type of ARPA money to kind of, I don't know how it would work, and I don't know the basis of it all, but I know that Green Bay obviously has a large Native population here, and me being one of them, to be exact. I think that if we pitch it right, I think there's a way for us to kind of help solve some of the issues that both Menominee, Oneida, and Green Bay have in dealing with, this housing issue. So I think definitely I'm going to sit on it for a little bit, but I'm just putting it out there that there's something there. I know that Menominee has millions right now in ARPA money that they would need to utilize. I don't know about Oneida. Haven't had a pulse on the BC in a while, so I think that's the biggest thing, is just really understanding where they're going to come from, what they're going to utilize it for. But if there's a way where we could pitch it that tribal members, both Menominee, Oneida, maybe even Stockbridge too, because I know those are like the three tribes that are kind of in our within like 90-mile radius, where we could create something that has something around the lines of creating housing for tribal members that don't have housing in the cities, and maybe somehow piggyback that on to allow other folks in there as well. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking about. But I think that this whole concept that we were developing on the Menominee Reservation around the tiny house community and like actually building an intentional community. Tiny houses aren't really that expensive. That's the beauty of it. You could have it at like 300 to 400 square foot, enough space for someone to live in. But I think that it would be really interesting to like see how that works. But I'm just putting it out there, food for thought, not really like I know what I'm talking about right now, but more of just like there's something there. I don't know what it is yet, but there's something there.
Ahmad, thank you for sharing all that information, and thanks for the questions, Mark. I kind of want to go back to what Commissioner Shelton was saying about some of the public hearings and just getting some testimonials from the public. Now, I want to get input from the other commissioners on how you guys think we should go about that. And like Commissioner Shelton was saying, we all do have, we're deeply rooted in our community, so we are able to get the people who wouldn't typically come to these meetings to come, and we have connections. And so how do we do that? What are the next steps for this? And what, because before we can really push housing, we have to really kind of get a scope of what the need is in the community. And we know housing is high, but it'd be nice to actually really I guess to have some testimonials on that. And also, I think that, this question's for Joe. Joe, are we able to create working groups within this commission, or no? Is that against the?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because
let me let me get back to you on that, because I think you could run into like a walking quorum issue if you have multiple people talking about issues before you have a meeting, so it looks like you're deciding on the issue before you meet. So that's one thing I'll get back to you on. But you could always, I think the working group would have to be less than a quorum. I mean, there's a lot of rules around that. So my thought is you probably cannot have working groups, but I do think though, if it was individual commissioners that were designated projects or were designated to work with staff, maybe it's one or two, I think that would probably work.
Okay, yeah, because it seems like there's different categories of here. There's housing, procurement, and then hiring, and there's a lot of different things that sometimes we can't afford to hold it all off. We can't afford just to work on one topic or subject at a time, so it'd be helpful if we're able to do that. But that's just what I think. Other commissioners, what are your ideas and thoughts on that?
I would say that I'm supportive of both of the frameworks that you laid out. I do see value in gathering just initially the sentiment of the community, and most likely housing will rise to the surface, but I'd love to cast a wide net if we can to get more voices in the conversation. Those 2 to 3 major priority areas are. I love the idea of breaking up the work and having us, 1 or 2 of us break off and kind of, at a working group level lead that initiative. I'm supportive of the plan.
So I guess my next question for the group is, when would you guys like to implement these public hearings and invite the public to come speak, to us? And, what do you guys see the timeline being for that? Before the new year or after, or?
I would say after the new year, you probably want to build. Obviously, yeah, we have connections, we have the ability to bring people there, but to reach a much wider audience, you'd probably want to promote it. Probably want to get somebody that like a really nice. I don't know if we have the budget for it, but like you'd want to have someone who makes really good food in the city. Like someone who makes really good food in the city. I'm not kidding about this. Like really good food. And you promote that as much as you can. And you basically put it out. Usually when it comes to like public events, usually it's like what, 3 months, at least 3 months out. And then you just keep promoting it and just keep people, do catchy advertising, however that works. Because if you're just going to throw out little flyers 2 weeks, maybe a Facebook ad like a month before, you're not going to get anybody there. But if you really want people to be there, you're going to want to have good food, and you want to make sure that people know that it's happening, and you want to make sure that it's at a time that's reasonable for majority of people. You're not going to get everybody at the same time, but a reasonable time for people to be there.
Commissioner Greeno, are you offering to cook for everybody?
I'd love to cook for everybody. Depends on what you want to eat. I can always make something delicious, but depends.
So more seriously though, so are we thinking that we want to focus on housing, or that we want to just have a more sort of general conversation where we're bringing in people from the public to kind of talk generally about what they see are issues? And I'm fine with either. I'm just trying to clarify, because that might help us to figure out a timeline if everybody wants to go in that direction. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's any serious dissent, but I think we should all be comfortable doing that, because it's going to be some work.
Yeah, I would say that this is me again. I would say that basically you'd want to have it open to have people come in, and then obviously like I hate to say this, we have an ulterior motive. It's housing. So we want to make sure that like we get as much people there to talk about the issues. And there's probably gonna be another issue that comes up, but we want to make sure that there's evidence basing, like out of, let's say we have this event, out of the 200 people that show up, 75 people say that housing is the biggest issue. Now we can take that to whoever it is, a policymaker, and be like, look, we had an event, 75 people said that we need housing is the biggest issue right now, and this is what we should be focused on. That's kind of what I would say. I keep it open-ended. People are going to want to come in and talk about whatever they want, and we should have people should have the ability to come in and talk about what they think is important for the city.
So my take on it is, if we host 2 or 3 meetings and each one has different topics that are more specific, I think people would be more willing to come to those. It was just I think we should definitely, whoever comes, they get to, voice their opinion, but I think maybe having like an overall like topic for the sessions would be helpful. So say housing is one, and then whatever else there is, if that makes sense.
So could I make a proposal then? What if we sort of shoot for some kind of public forum, hearings, whatever you want to call it, that the ERC hosts, and we do it in January? And maybe we even do it during Martin Luther King Jr. week, right? And we kind of do a tie-in. And then we have a meeting in December. I think Joe put out a date and maybe that works for people, and we could use that as kind of a planning meeting. As long as everybody can make it, or we try to find a different meeting in December, and then we just kind of try to build for something in January where we can get some buzz going around this.
So, Commissioner Shelton, are you proposing that the meeting that we have with the public is focused on housing? Because we had a couple of proposals. One, an open meeting. I'm kind of like leaning more for a focus meeting. So because if you have an open meeting, you're going to have a variety of people bringing up all sort of issues. And I think that for us to kind of carry on some initiatives, we need to start working on something a little bit more concrete. I agree with you that housing is a big issue, but housing is not unrelated to other issues, which could be different other, tangential issues that will be connected with that. So my preference will be, if we're going to go with this, number one, that we keep it focused. Number two, that we work with organizations established in the city. I have a number of experiences. I'm sure that I'm speaking for everybody here of trying to gather a group of people. People have jobs, and many people, especially in certain communities, multiple jobs and childcare issues. And so it becomes difficult to have a good attendance to certain meetings. So I think that it will be good to invite specific leaders of our community that they can bring, what they're to the meeting, what they hear are some issues around housing.
Yeah, Commissioner Ortiz, I think that's all, I agree with all of it. And, I think what we could do is at our meeting in December, we could like, all kind of brainstorm who would be the organizations, who's going to actually do the reach out to each one. And that way it's, it's nicely planned and structured. And so we're not just like, as Commissioner Greeno said, throwing out some flyers and hoping for the best.
It could be a good opportunity also to introduce ourselves as members of this commission to the community and to the people who come to the meeting.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that, Commissioner Ortiz, that I think that's much needed for us to introduce ourselves.
And also to introduce, I think what the commission is here to do in general. And there's probably not a great understanding of what we are to do. And so if that's the lens we want to take, maybe the meeting can just be focused on the three areas within the non-discrimination ordinance of housing, public accommodations, and employment, right? And as a way to solidify why we're here, and then also to focus the conversation.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep, I agree with that. Absolutely. So do we have a consensus to use our meeting on December 15th as a planning meeting for this event in January then? Can everyone make the meeting in December?
Is it December 13, right?
That's what I
Oh,
was
sorry.
saying for clarity. It's Monday, December 13th at 5.
Sorry, 13th. Okay, yes. Monday, December 13th at 5 p.m. Yes.
I can make it.
Yep, I'll be there.
Yes, I can make it.
Mm-hmm.
So we will put that item on the agenda. And the item would be a planning meeting to discuss and plan next steps for what are we calling the event in January?
we can figure that out at the next meeting.
All right, we're just gonna say
Everybody can
public
kind of,
hearing events.
everybody can kind of think about that between now and then.
Okay. Does anyone have any further comments, questions, or discussion points that they want to talk about? And again, this agenda item is to talk about issues or needs of the community.
Can I just say one thing quickly? If we don't, we obviously, you know, everybody's busy and, you know, finding times to meet has been our biggest challenge. You know, obviously we don't have a date now, but if we are tentatively thinking, you know, something to coincide with Martin Luther King Day, you know, maybe that's something for people to just think about when they're scheduling stuff for the next few weeks. Just trying to keep that as open as possible. Is King Day the 13th or the 20th? Does anybody know? Oh, sorry, I'm looking at December.
It's the 18th.
It's the 17th.
17th.
It's the 17th. Okay, so maybe something that week would be good.
Do we have any restrictions for public gatherings due to COVID-19? I mean, is this, I'm assuming if we're talking January is going to be an indoor gathering. So what is the limitation right now? Or does the city have any?
At this point, I don't think the city has any restrictions as long as people can social distance. So this is kind of a comment here. But I think when you talk about getting public input, there's multiple ways to do that. And you probably want to use a variety of ways for each topic as well. So, you know, a public forum, just like this, where the hybrid model might be perfect. You might also, I think Commissioner Brigno was talking about kind of like a big get together with like food being served. That's not as formal as the feedback you get in here. And then you probably also have like a survey that you could use. So there's multiple options that we can talk about next month on how we want to go about it. But yeah, I don't think there's any restrictions. You know, if there's a big enough room, we can get together. I think what we'll have to plan next month is it going to be a public meeting with maybe you guys running it as like a panel, or is it like a formal meeting like this where you make a motion to open up the floor and things like that? So these are all things we can discuss next month. Sorry, that's a long answer to your question.
We probably want to ensure that we have the ability to have video conferencing too for people that can't join as well, so that, you know, boosts our numbers a little bit more. Obviously, in my mind, maybe we have like we set the stage per se of like what could be discussed, maybe give people an intro to everything and what we're doing, what we're gathering. And then if folks want to come forward and talk about it, that'd be great. I really don't want to sit and talk all night. If we're doing a panel, it doesn't sound enthusiastic to me. I'd rather hear from everybody else. So I think, you know, if we're going to do that, maybe just, we call it, have a presser, like just different comments, maybe statements that we can share with the people who are there. And then whatever kind of speaks to them, they can step forward and talk about it. I don't know. That's how my thought would be, is kind of how to move it forward. It's just get something to kind of spark people's thinking, to kind of start thinking about this whole idea.
So for the January Martin Luther King Day, I just wanted to make sure that we're not, we aren't hosting an event where other organizations in the city are also hosting events as well, because I'd hate to take away from that. Any input on that, or any ideas?
I think maybe we could all kind of ask around about that. I doubt a lot of those are necessarily planned right now. And probably most of them are on MLK Day itself, which is probably not the day that we want to do it, right? Because it's a holiday. So I think maybe if we could all just kind of think about that. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's probably a little early to know that right now, though. So I think maybe we could all just kind of think about that, and then, you know, maybe we can settle on a date next time. I was just suggesting that if people could kind of keep their weeks open right now, you know, if at all possible, don't plan anything big that week. So just kind of thinking that might be a good week for us to try and do it.
Any other comments, questions, ideas? The time is 6:38 right now. So we, if there's no further questions, comments, or ideas, we can end the meeting now, or I mean, we can, if you guys have some more time to discuss, we can discuss some more, whatever the group is up for.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yep, I just wanted to ask if there's any other things that people wanted to say.
And I think with this item too, you could either have a motion to receive and place on file. It's a very long, broad item, or you could have a motion to hold, and we could always carry it over if there was more discussion next week or receiving next month.
Okay, so then, but this would be a different agenda item from planning it, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's why I think it's, if you receive and place on file, this is such a broad item that after you plan next month, you're gonna have so many other items you can choose from that it's okay to receive and place this on file.
Okay, so can we get a motion to have this agenda item receive a place on file?
So moved.
I'll
Okay.
second.
So first is from Shelton, second is from, sorry,
Michael.
I didn't, okay. Yeah. Just so that we have that recorded. Okay, so then that's approved to be on file for the next meeting.
Sorry, Chair Yang. Then you have to take
sorry.
the
Oh my
votes.
gosh,
Yeah, it's all good.
All who are for it, please say aye.
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 All who oppose, please say nay. Okay, now it's approved. Sorry, that is the one step that I always forget. Okay, well, if there's no further comments or anything, then can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Okay.
I second.
So Vincent, first from Vincent and then second from Ortiz. So can I, so all in favor, please say aye.
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 And then all opposed, please say nay. All right, thank you everyone for a wonderful meeting and discussion today. I appreciate everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a
Have
good
a good
night.
night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.